Hello world, and we are back. My name's Kyle Fischl. This is going to be episode 162 of my poker vlog. For this one, a very special streamed 5-5-10-20 session at Daytona Beach Racing and Car Club. In the lineup is Chris Moneymaker, the legend. We're going to get right into some hands.
From the Daytona Beach Racing and Car Club, this is Daytona Poker Live. Welcome, folks. It's going to be another night of action right in the middle of the Moneymaker Tour. My name's Alec Rome.
This is going to be a really fun night. Like you said, we got Chris back. Will has some work to do to get caught up from last night. Tom's in a different position tonight. And we're joined by vlogger sensation and part-time commentator in Daytona, Mr. Kyle Fischl, that you can all see with his official poker gear in C2.
Welcome to the fucking show.
First interesting hand. We've been card dead for about 2 laps before we looked at our first playable hand. Ace-Jack offsuit from the +1. Right now it's just 5-5, but we quickly moved to a 5-5-10-20 game. But for 5-5 I raised to $25, and after 2 callers we immediately get punished when Will wakes up with Ace-King suited. He 3-bets to 350, and we're just going to fold Ace-Jack. Guess it's a good fold. We were behind, and we would not have flopped or turned anything, and 9-7 is going to be able to bluff this one through. Following that, the $20 straddle's on. When Rex and Chris Moneymaker called the $20, I looked down at pocket threes, think it's completely reasonable to set mine, so I throw in the call before Todd raises it to 125. And when 2 other people call, I still think I'm getting the right price to set mine. 105 to win 520. So, yeah, we're definitely in there. Unfortunately, the board comes King 7-7, 2 hearts. If it checks through on the flop, there's a pretty decent chance that I actually have the best hand. But it's not going to come to that, as the pre-flop aggressor continues for 225 with pretty much nothing but ace high and gets called by Rex's king. So I obviously cannot continue. And kings and 10s will take this one down at the river. Alright, haven't connected too much with the flop yet. Maybe king-queen will be the difference. With the $20 straddle on, I raise to 60. Chris Moneymaker and Will decide to make the call. I've got these hands in jail, but the flop is 7-5-3 with 2 clubs. I check, as I really didn't connect with this board too much. And Chris throws out a bet of $150. With Chris's exact hand, I'd say that is pretty much one of the best flops you could ever hope for. I could peel one, but when Will makes the call, I really can't call with 2 overs facing 2 different opponents. So I let it go, and on the turn brick, Chris bets again, and he'll take it down. Alright, so premium hands aren't really working, but when it's only a raise to $35 in 1 call, I'm on the button with Jack 8 offsuit. Good enough to play in position, I would say, versus players that play literally any 2 cards. So I call the $35. Big blind calls as well, so we end up going 4 ways to a flop of Jack 7 deuce with 2 clubs. Flop top pair, first time I connect, feels pretty good. When Chris bets $130 and Will calls, I think that I actually have enough backdoor equity to be able to continue here. I could turn a straight draw, I could turn an 8. These opponents could have any 2 cards, as we've seen. They could have clubs, they could have 7x, so I could even have the best hand right now. So I decided to make the call for $130, and we're going 3 ways to a turn card, which is the 9 of diamonds. I'm really hoping like a flush draw will just check and hope to realize some equity and I could see a free river. But Chris Moneymaker did not win the main event by making things easy. He continues for $350. I'm probably going to have to call this one, picking up my gut shot, but when Will makes the call, I think it's hard for me to have the best hand against 2 players. Like, Chris Moneymaker could easily just have like ace 5 of clubs here, which I'm beating, and I could happily call this bet. But when Will calls, it's much more likely that someone has a better top pair than me, and that means I'd be drawing to roughly 6 outs. So I kind of think for a little bit and eventually let this one go. And immediately get punished with the bink 10 of spades on the river. What a dumb river card. And it goes check check. I obviously would have bet river when checked to me. Probably get called by Chris Moneymaker at least, but oh well. This one's not going to work out for me. Alright, but we finally pick up our first premium with the $20 straddle on. There's 2 calls before Will makes it up $100. I look down at ace-king offsuit. We're definitely 3-betting this one up. We have a premium. 300 is going to be the bet, and Will makes the call. The flop, again, misses me. Comes queen 9-9, and my opponent checks to me. I think on this board, my opponent misses a lot of the time, as he could have, like, ace-5, 6-7, and even a hand like pocket 6s. They may fold to just a c-bet. As I 3-bet, I've been playing very tight, so if I had aces, kings, queens, ace-queen, and ace-king, I would down bet on this board. So that's what I do. I bet $175. I think all of his nothings fold here, so I can pretty much clear out all his random holdings equity. But that's not going to happen as my opponent raises to $510. Alright, let's think about this. I don't think he ever raises with a 9. I don't think, like, Queen Jack raises. I think they have enough showdown value to just call and possibly call down. And then I start to get the idea that maybe he's raising with Jack 10. But I think that that hand has enough equity to just realize when they call the 175. I think they have a good enough price to not need to turn their hand into a bluff. So now I'm really just thinking he has, like, 10s or jacks or 8s. 6s were a little bit lower than I anticipated, but since he put 1/3 of his stack in, I'm not really sure he folds to a jam here. I would definitely just jam if I had aces, kings, ace, queen, so it's kind of unfortunate that I happen to have the only hand in range that would play this way that he could actually get to fold here. And, I guess I'm just gonna let it go. We are continuing to not find very much success on this big game. But that's okay. Maybe ace-jack suited will do the trick. With just the $10 straddle, I raise to $50 from the +2 position. Todd calls, and then Michael decides to 3-bet to $225. Well, ace-jack, it is suited. I'm out of position, so that's not great, but these players are playing very wide. I could have the best hand here. Could have ace-10, could have a weak pocket pair like he does. So we're in there. Todd is as well, and we end up going 3 ways to a flop of 8, 9, 10 with 2 clubs. On this board, surprisingly enough, Todd just leads for $400, and then the pre-flop aggressor, who is a 3-better, decides to call the $400. This is somewhat of a major decision point for me. It's really only jam or fold. I block Queen Jack, which is pretty significant. In my mind, I'm not really sure Todd would ever lead with a flush draw. I really think he has like 8-9, maybe 10 Jack. And then when Michael calls, I put him on an overpair like queens, kings, aces. Hands that are strong enough to 3-bet, but can't really fold to a single bet even on a dicey board like this. But could I get 2 different people to fold for a jam here? If one of them calls, I really have to realize if I had 2 spades on the flop instead of just 1, it would be a slam dunk all in. But because there's only 1, I decide to let it go, fight another day. Turn gives me backdoor spades. My opponents both get it in, choose to run it twice. On the first board, I would have made the nut flush, and on the second board, I would have lost to a pair of 7s. So, somewhat disappointed that I was against these 2 exact hands, and Todd decided to lead on this board. I can pretty happily call a single bet from the pre-flop 3-better, or even jam there. And then if I turn the deuce of spades, we probably can just happily get it in. But as played, I just weakly let it go. But that's fine. We look down at king-queen offsuit. With a few $20 limps, we raise to 60 from the big blind. Only the small blind and the hijack call, so we're 3 ways to a flop, where we flop top pair. Okay, how can we mess this one up? When it checks to me, I throw out a little bit between 1/3 and half pot size bet $80, and both players fold. Yay, we actually won a hand. That's pretty good.
Please take a moment and subscribe.
And now we might be getting some momentum going as we look down at pocket jacks with a ton of limps to me. I'm in the hijack. We have to size way up here to get all these crumb bum hands out of there. I make it $160 after 4 limps. And apparently 160 was not enough as all 4 players decide to call. Alright, massive hand, massive opportunity, have by far the most equity. Can we just flop a jack and it be an easy decision? Nope. King, queen, 4. Well, I mean, against 4 other players, I guess jacks are never good. Yes, I have kings and queens in range, and none of them do, but these players are playing any 2 cards. They could easily have, like, queen 4 and just never be folding. So, when it checks to me, I check. Maybe I'll turn a jack. Nope, 7 of hearts. And Rex, who played ace-king very passively, is now going to bet $575. Chris is going to call with his flush draw, turn a 5.
But it's time to exit stage left.
Rex goes for a small $400 bet on the river and ends up getting a tank call from Chris Moneymaker. So jacks turned pretty much dead. Not exactly the flop you want with pocket jacks. And we are down about $1,200 at this point. At least we can play some suited connectors. When Will raises to $50 over a $20 straddle, Tom 3-bets to $150. Now I get position on Tom, so it's a pretty good situation. I have a suited connector, it should be pretty live. If you flop a 9, it's probably the best pair, so we are definitely going to continue for $150. And we end up going heads up to Queen 7-3 2 diamonds. We flop a flush draw, we have backdoor straight possibilities. Feels pretty good. When my opponent checks to me, we really don't want this to check through. We'd love him to fold like ace-king, ace-jack, his exact hand like ace-4, as we just have 9 high at this point. So when I bet $150, I think I'm going to win here a lot of the time. What I'm not really expecting is to get check raised to $425. What a weird situation. Nothing's going to be easy for me today, it turns out. But either way, I can continue on a 10, jack, 6, 5. So many good cards for me on the turn. Even just a diamond would be fantastic. So when I make the call, hoping for one of those, nope, can't even turn a gut shot. I get the 4 of hearts. Actually gives Tom a pair, so that's double bad. And now he checks it to me. I mean, how many times have you ever seen a double check raise? Probably not that many. So Tom pretty much never has a queen here. Think a hand like ace, queen, kings, aces are happier to just bet, or maybe the weakest queens will just check call down, but they really don't check raise all too often. So thinking my opponent has like maybe pocket 10s, maybe pocket jacks, something like that, I think I definitely need to make those hands fold. So I fire a bet out there. I fire $625. And it appears Tom was just messing around because he eventually folds pretty quickly. He would later tell me that he misread his hand and thought he had ace-4 of diamonds, and I would say that makes a lot of sense, actually. Alright, finally building some momentum. Will raises to $60 with ace-3 of spades. I looked down at pocket aces in a massive game where people are playing any 2 cards. Seems like the best situation possible. I'm going to go more than 3x here. I want to definitely size up here, commit him to better hands. Possibly even induce a 4-bet rip. But when I make it $225, it folds all the way around to Will, who is the only caller. When the flop is king 4 deuce 2 diamonds, my opponent checks to me. I think this is a board where I'm just way ahead or way behind. I don't see any difficulty getting all the money in by the river if my opponent had like king queen, king jack, any of that stuff. And I'm not really worried against middling pocket pairs either. Flush draw would call any sizing anyway, so there's a merit to betting here, get value from that, but I really think my opponent is weighted towards literally nothing, so I'm going to check, hopefully give my opponent a chance to catch up or start bluffing on the turn. When I check, really hoping for a middling card that's not a diamond. Of freaking course not. 5 of diamonds. Really not ever putting my opponent on ace-3 as I have 2 of the aces, but the obvious flush draw gets there. And now my opponent bets $325. Well, this player could easily have king, queen, single diamonds, ace, king, single diamonds, maybe even pocket jacks, single diamond. There are so many hands he could have that I'm beating here that would bet exactly like this when I play my hand this way. Additionally, a 3 is a straight for me, so never really folding when I check flop to this bet. I call the $325. And now we get the middling unconnected card. And my opponent jams for $1,300. Well, as played, my opponent could easily just have ace X with just the ace of diamonds. This opponent's very capable of bluffing. And when you beat all their bluffs, and you even beat hands like king, queen, single diamonds, jacks, tens, Plenty of value hands you beat, a ton of bluffs available. If I had the ace of diamonds, I think this is pretty easily a fold here, as my opponent can't have any of those bluffs. But when I double check and it is hearts, I think this one just has to be a call. So I end up putting the money in the middle, and I end up losing a ton of money.
You chose poorly.
This player in particular, if I just bet flop, I don't think he even folds his gut shot. So results-wise, I think I'm just destined to lose this one. You know, maybe if I just pot the flop, he'll fold, but you're not really trying to get ace-3 to fold on this board when you have aces. So kind of just a dumb run out in my opinion. Alright, we have suited gappers. That seems to be the only hand we can win with. So when we raise to $80, we're feeling pretty good about it until Chris Moneymaker wakes up with queens and makes it $320. Alright, this hand is not going to be a win for us either. At least it was less than the last one, and now we look down at ace-king offsuit. When Will raises to $100, Tom Wheaton calls. I'm going to 3-bet this one, $350 with ace-king. I guess I could go even bigger, but seeing as my opponent is willing to call with ace-3 offsuit, we like those hands to stay in there pretty much. When I make a $350, both players call, and the flop comes king, queen, 10. Not my favorite. I'd like it a little drier with the king, but either way, we can get value from spade draws. We can get value from like 10 jack, maybe ace queen, all those things. So when it checks to me, we don't want spades or single jacks to be able to see it for free, as we've already been burned today. So we're going to continue betting. I bet 40% pot, $400. Will makes the call, and then Tom decides to jam. What another just insane spot to be in. Like, how am I ever good here? At worst, I think my opponent has like jack queen of spades. Maybe even ace jack. Jack 9 is definitely available for a call caller. Pocket 10s available. 6-7 of spades. Anything my opponent does this with is going to have a ton of equity. It's never going to be like ace 5 offsuit. So not only do you have to have the best hand, you have to hold against whatever equity he has if you choose to make this call. And then you still have Will to act behind. Like, Will would never raise if he flopped the stone nuts like ace jack. So you have two different players to worry about. Both that can have nutted hands when you really can't. Either one of them could have jack 9, kind of unavailable for a 3-better. So I guess this is just a fold.
Stupid clown.
Will decides to call, and the two players will end up chopping the pot as Will makes Broadway on one run out, and Tom hits a 9 on the second one. So I guess you can just get it in there sometimes, but for me, it just did not feel like that time. Well, that's somewhat disappointing, but we make it $60 with pocket 6s from the big blind. It is a $20 button straddle continuously at this time, so I'm very early making this raise. 3 different players call, and we end up going 4 ways to a flop of king 6 deuce with 2 clubs. As I'm first to act, I think this one should be a check raise. These opponents will bet with any flush draw, any king. Hell, even like maybe jack 10 might just turn their hand into a bluff if they're last to act and checked 2. These players are wild, so we are fine to check this one and hopefully get a check raise, possibly check raise jam on this one.
Want to see what else I can do?
But surprisingly, it checks all the way through. Why wouldn't it? Can I please fade a club one time, dealer, so I have an easy decision? Absolutely never. 10 of clubs is the turn card. Not necessarily horrible, as I do expect any of these opponents to bet if they had a flush draw. So I'm pretty confident that no one has a flush yet. They could easily have like ace 3 of clubs, ace x of clubs, maybe single queen of clubs. That'll pay off a bet. So we're definitely going to start betting here and reevaluate river. I bet $100. Michael calls. Good thing I checked. He gets the turn at 10, has some equity. Chris Moneymaker calls. Good thing I checked. He also turned at 10, and Will calls with a gut shot. So we end up getting $300 in the middle with a 75% chance to win. 4 of spades. 5-3 gets there. I don't really expect anyone to have 5-3, but seeing that Will has 5-4, I guess I should think about it a little bit. Maybe pocket 9s will be a disbeliever. Either way, we can't just check this one. I bet $350. Michael thinks for a very long time before eventually letting it go. Chris Moneymaker went backdoor 2-pair. So he's going to make the call. That's pretty good for me. Get some value. Will thinks about it for briefly before he lets it go. And suppose the check on the flop actually netted me the most money possible in this hand. So sometimes you let your opponent catch up and you make some money. Sometimes you let them catch up too much and they cost you. But this one worked out well, and it's truly a dream come true to win a hand against an actual legend of the game. Following that, with a couple limps, I'm in the cutoff / straddle with ace-jack suited. Chris Moneymaker makes it 125. I'm going to just call this one. I think 3-betting is somewhat of an overplay, even though we would have the best hand. Michael decides to call it king-queen, and we end up going 3 ways to a flop of ace-jack 10. Awesome. Like, even as the cards were fanned out and I was sitting there, I saw ace and jack and was just praying for a disconnecting card, and I could see the 10 last. It was so tilting to see that 10, to be honest. Either way, it checks to Chris Moneymaker, who continues for $200. Definitely not folding here. He could easily have ace king, ace queen, bet the same way. I have beat that hand very handily, happily to make the call. But Michael bets $900. And now Chris folds. What a fun spot to be in.
That should get Chris out. Maybe Kyle jams and we see a run it twice scenario here.
Kyle has been in some really difficult positions tonight. It has just not been his night on stream.
So previously in the session, Michael already jammed with a flush draw, got called, and lost his entire stack. This is his second bullet. I don't really expect an opponent to stack off with a flush draw 2 times in the same way. Typically, they slow down their aggression, so if he had just like Jack X of hearts, I expect him to just call this and hopefully realize some equity. However, if my opponent did have a hand like King Queen, he probably would raise here and protect against the hearts. Additionally, if he had like pocket 10s, maybe he does the same thing. I don't really expect this opponent to have an ace all too often because Chris Moneymaker raised it to 125 and then continued into 3 people. I expect him to have an ace a lot of the time, and I have an ace, so that really reduces the possibility of this opponent having an ace. If I don't really think he ever does this raise a second time with a flush draw, and I don't think he has an ace, I'm really kind of just putting him on king, queen, or pocket 10s. I block so much of the board, and I don't think he has a flush draw here all too often. And if I think he has any of those hands, and I think Chris Moneymaker folded an ace, I don't even have that many outs. This is just such a dumb spot, so I actually tank for probably the longest I've tanked on a stream ever. And then eventually just sheepishly let it go, somewhat crying as I do it.
I'm gonna get out of here.
And he will make the correct fold. Great laydown by Kyle. I mean, it's doesn't ever feel good or look fancy to, you know, end up folding, but he has made the correct fold there once again.
I would almost never fold top 2 pair, but I guess the bright side is this time it turned out to be correct, and we are down piles. $3,000 because we get the grossest runouts ever. But that's okay. We got ace-3 of hearts. Hearts is definitely my favorite suit, so it can't steer me wrong. Ends up being just a 4-way limped pot for the $20 straddle, and we flop an ace. Well, that's good. When it checks to me, I bet half pot, $40. Pretty standard. Get value from diamond draws. Get value from middling pocket pairs. But dealer button / straddle calls with 6-4 and turns a 4. Why wouldn't he? Well, I'm going to continue betting. Still need to get value from diamond draws and milling pocket pairs. So I bet $110. The graphics are a little bit slow. My opponent raises to $310. And because I picked up a gut shot as well, a 5 gives me pretty much the best hand most of the time. Can't really fold here, especially as he might be turning some diamonds into bluffs some of the time. So I call. River is the jack of diamonds, so turn is 4, river's jack of diamonds, so all the flush draws get there. Because why wouldn't they? It goes check, check, and 6-4 is going to be the winner on this one. Awesome. Next hand of note. This one is quite interesting. With 4 $20 limps to me, I'm in the dealer button with king, queen offsuit. Gonna go big with it again, $160. Maybe if these opponents' hands are so weak that they're just limpable, maybe they'll fold to $160. Absolutely never. We get 3 callers, all of crumb bum hands. We have a massive equity advantage. And for the nearly $700 pot, the flop comes King 6-5 with 2 spades. Do have the King of Spades. We do have top pair. Seems good to me. Checks all the way to me. I'm going to bet here $225. About 1/3 pot. What I would do with Ace King, King Queen, pocket aces, pocket kings, all that stuff. Hopefully we can just get folds or even just get calls and get a safe disconnected turn card. Well, Michael and Chris Moneymaker decide to call. Chris with a gut shot, Michael with a pair of 5s. And the turn is the 3 of clubs. Giving Chris a pair, giving Mike a gut shot and flush draw. What a card for him, calling with 3rd pair. And on this card, it doesn't even get to me. Chris just leads for $500. Sounds about right. But having King and Queen offsuit, blocking both flush draws, I think this is a pretty easy call spot. Sure, Chris can have 6-4 some of the time, but he easily could have a hand like Michael, 5-4 of clubs, Ace-5 of clubs, any of that stuff that just turned a bunch of club equity and wants to lead out. So, can't really fold to just one lead here with top pair. Plenty of draws my opponents could play this way, so I make the call. And Michael, turning the absolute ginnest of cards for himself, chooses to just call again. Like I said, this opponent did not jam a flush draw a second time, so it makes me feel better about my fold on the ace-jack hand. So we are 3 ways to a river card. I will call any bet, any sizing, if it's a disconnecting card, besides maybe an ace, because there are some ace-x flush draws that would be beating me. But of course, the river is the 6 of spades. Chris makes 2 pair. He technically beats me. Michael makes a straight. He beats me as well. It checks to me. I, for like 10 seconds, think about turning my King of Spades into a bluff and just ripping it, because I don't think that made flushes check to me as played. But I don't think any sets or 2 pairs are really going to fold to even a jam here. And Michael making a straight, absolutely never folding. So my stack is a little bit wrong. I had about 2,400 in my stack at the time, so a jam would be much bigger than 1,100. But either way, I check it back and get to see that both crumb bum hands were better than mine. Next interesting hand. I raised to $60 under the gun with King-Jack offsuit. Michael decides to make the call as well as Chris Moneymaker. So we are 3 ways to a flop of Jack 7-5 2 spades. I'm first act. I bet $75. Michael calls and then Chris raises to $275 because he has a flush draw. And I have King-Jack.
Yeah, it's all wrong.
Well, every raise on the flop I've faced so far has had a better hand than me, so really don't expect to not be against a set or a hand with a ton of equity. And I have Michael to call behind me, so guess I'll just fold this one too. Turns out it was an incorrect fold. Chris had a flush draw and Michael had a weaker jack. But Michael makes a call, so I get to see the rest of the hand. It goes bet 600, call 600, river, spade. Why wouldn't it be? Guess it was a good fold because Chris makes a flush and he would have had the best hand. Bets a ton, gets a fold, and raises with a flush draw, gets a flush. Easy game. Down 4,600. What a fun day playing poker for me. But with 3 limps, I look down at ace-jack offsuit. I raised to $125. And similarly to all the other hands, when I raise, we go 5 ways to a flop, where we brick everything. King 3-3. Okay, anyone can have a king. There's 6 people in the hand, so when it checks to me, I'm just going to check. Rex was at a fun little bet with Jack 9 suited and ends up clearing everyone out and just winning. So, good little bluff by that guy, honestly. Now we're down 4,800. Fun times. But we have ace-king again. So, with 1 limp, we raised to $75. 3 different players call, so we end up going 4 ways to a flop. This is the last hand of the stream. Last hand of the night. See people racking up. I'm playing out of the rack. When it checks to me, I'm just going to check call this one. It's the last hand. I'm in the rack. These guys could have Jack 3. We've seen that being played. Any set. So we're going to go for 2 streets of value, just not the flop. It ends up checking through. And the turn is a jack. the exact card, someone would check the flop. So that's super fun. But when Will bets 125, I did not check the flop to fold to a single bet, so I call the 125. Alright, if it's a safe river card, I can go for some value myself if checked to. Nope, it's a 3. My opponent checks to me, and this should really just be a bet here. I can get value from 8s, 9s, 10s, 4s, 5s, everything. Don't really expect my opponent to have a weaker ace than me, as I block it pretty heavily. If my opponent had a 3, he might play it the exact same way, bet because he thinks the jack's a good card for him, check because he now has the second best full house. But so thinking my opponent can easily have a 3 here, I just check this one back. This is a horrible play in the long term, but it's the last hand of the night. It would suck to get actually felted or check raised on the last hand. Shouldn't be thinking this way ever. Every hand is unique. You shouldn't play differently just because this is the last hand of the night or first hand of the night. So this should just be a value bet of like 350 and get a snap call by ace 10. But I pretty much incorrectly checked it back and just show because, you know, I'm bad at poker. And that leaves us to pretty much a 5K loss for the day. Had some pretty sick runouts. Made some good folds, made some bad folds, good bets, bad bets, all the same. This will be a session to learn from and think about for a long time.
Yeah, it took some time with this video. Definitely wanted to review the hands and really analyze my play. And 4 of the main takeaways from this is probably most pivotally with the aces hand. You have to bet the flop there. You're trying to get values from 7s, 8s, 9s, 10s, all those hands. And if you check flop and say like a queen hits the turn, those hands might just fold and not even give you any value. So you definitely want to get value from those pocket pairs. Got to bet the flop when you have aces on that hand. Results-wise, I don't think anything changes. I think my opponent just calls flop and then I still lose. Maybe lose less, maybe not a full stacking if I bet flop, but still think it goes the same way. On the ace-king on king-queen 10 board, because I don't have 2 pair, I think that this should just be a check. In the moment, I thought that I had nut advantage. I have ace-jack here more often than my opponents, but they probably have just as much ace-jack as well as jack-9, so I'd say my opponents actually have the nut advantage, so maybe this should just be a check and hopefully get one step closer to showdown. Possibly results-oriented, but that is a takeaway from this video. On the king-queen versus the 2 different crumb bum hands, the big takeaway is run better, Kyle. Just don't let the river turn you absolutely dead. Just hold when you have the best hand. That's how you win at poker. Don't let the bad hands just get there on you. And then finally with the ace-jack hand where we do a big fold, I think the biggest takeaway is just trust your reads and pay attention to your opponents. If you really think your opponent would not play anything but his nutted hands this way, just trust yourself and make the correct fold. Try to save yourself some money and move on from there. Well, this session was definitely a learning experience. It was an expensive one. We get to test ourselves at a higher stakes. We get to review our hands afterwards, get to run it by actual very accomplished pros, get their opinions of them, and anyone that has a comment about how I played, happy to read all of them. Can't promise I'll get back to all of them, but please lay it on me. Let me know what you think, and I appreciate it. And I will see you all on the next one.